Hi there. I'm Zander Sprague, and I'm really honored to be able to present to you today Why Don't They Cry? Understanding Your Living Child's Grief. Now, a little about me. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor. I live in California, and I am also a sibling survivor. My older sister Lucy was murdered in 1996. I've written two books on about sibling loss, and I sit on the board of the Compassionate Friends, which is an organization for families that have lost a child. I am the sibling representative, and I do a lot of work advocating for siblings. So I'm delighted that you're here today, and I hope that you get a lot of value out of this presentation. So let me get this going. Of course. Sorry about that. And this presentation is based on a book of the same name, Why Don't They Cry? Understanding Your Living Child's Grief. And let me just take a moment and tell you how this book came about. In the last 20 years, I've spoken a lot about sibling loss and inevitably got to talk with lots of parents. And they would come up and say, I've lost a son or daughter, but I have other living children. And they kept asking, why don't they cry? Why don't I see them grieving? And I guess having been asked quite a few times why I would like why this was going on, I thought, I should write a book about that. And so I did. So let's get started. Let me first talk about the sibling survivor experience, because this is really important if you are a parent and you've lost a child. Um, First and foremost, losing your sibling is equally as devastating as if you're a parent. It's not the same, but it's equal. Our sibling relationship is the longest one that we have in our lives. And I think we reasonably expect that it's going to last for most of our lifetime. I think all of us have a certain age at which either ourselves or people that we know in our life it's more likely that that's the time of their life where they may pass away. So let me say 75, 80 years old, we start to say, all right, well, this is the time of life. And in a sibling relationship, we probably have that similar expectation. Now, it doesn't make it easier when you lose your sibling at that age, but it's more, if I could say, acceptable. We say, okay, this is when this is more likely to happen. And so that long relationship, when it is cut short, has many effects, and I'll share some of those with you. It's important to think about the sibling bonds. Um, for lots of people, your siblings are perhaps one of your best friends. Now, maybe you don't have the best relationship with your sibling. However, you probably are going to be there if they really need you, no matter what's gone on. In working with other sibling survivors, I hear a lot. Some of my fellow sibling survivors have lost their brother or sister to substance abuse. And that tends to be a very long period of time. If someone's addicted for many years, there's a lot of deception that goes on, lying, stealing, etc. And even when you say, that's it, I'm done, I'm not dealing with you anymore, if they really need you, you're probably still going to be there. And Our siblings are know us better than we know ourselves. I know that my sister Lucy and my younger sister Cynthia know me probably better than I know myself, and I know both of them better than they know themselves. I certainly understood where Lucy's sensitive points were. And that sibling bond, if you're a parent, you know siblings are going to argue, they're going to fight. And if you have brothers and sisters, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that bond is really strong and it extends throughout our whole entire life. Think about if I think about my younger sister and I in dealing with my parents who are aging, right? It's great to have someone to bounce ideas off of. Hey, what do you think's going on with mom? What do we do about this? How do we help dad with that? And so that sibling bond is really strong. And when it ends prematurely, it is really disconcerting, much the same way that losing a child is very disconcerting. Now, I refer to us as the lost survivors. And the reason I do that is because the experience is very lonely. After my sister was killed, I was living in Boston at the time. I'm originally from Boston. Lots of people knew my parents. I'd run into them on the street, and they would naturally say, "Oh my gosh, how are your parents doing?" Now, I don't. That's a natural question. Of course, I was asked, but no one asked how I was. And there was a time where I started to think about that my loss was somehow less significant than my parents. But as I said before, it's equally as significant. There's so much about having a brother and sister that is so important to just our life. And so when we are not acknowledged, it has a profound effect. And so even though we're surviving, no one is asking how we are. And I think that has a profound effect. As I said before, the dynamics of that sibling relationship are, well, there's fighting and there's fun. There's times where you have great memories of the stuff that you've done with your siblings. As adults, you may go on vacation together. You may all have children, and all the children get together, and you get to sit around and watch them grow. You share all kinds of family moments and life events, and but there's also fighting. And when siblings fight, because we got the dirt on each other, we are oftentimes swinging for the fences. You don't start off nice when you're arguing with your siblings. You start off with the things you know are going to hurt them, and they have the stuff that's going to hurt you when they say it. Maybe it's reminding you of a mistake that you made. Maybe it's making, poking fun at some aspect of your life that you're not pleased with. And so I think that's really important to understand that part of what's going on and understanding your living child's grief is that sibling dynamic and how it is so important to all of us. Now, one of the things that happens sometimes is maybe you don't have a great relationship with your sibling. Maybe there's a falling out, you haven't talked for a while, or the last thing you said was in an argument and perhaps it was really mean. And then that sibling passes away. And it's that last word, regrets. You don't have a chance to get the closure. As I told you earlier, my older sister was murdered. Now, luckily, when she was killed, I was on really good terms with Lucy. But more importantly, for years, with all of my family, I end the conversation telling them that I love them. So when I was told that Lucy was murdered, I didn't have any regrets. I know that the last thing she heard from me was that I loved her, and she told me that she loved me. But sometimes we don't have that, and we can't get that closure. And that's really challenging, to not be able to take back what you said because perhaps you didn't really mean it. You were just angry or hurt at the time. Now, another thing that I think is really important in understanding sibling grief is if if you've lost a child and you have surviving children, if they're over 15, I just want to tell you, we're not going to come to you. We're not going to really grieve in front of you. I have a really close relationship with my mom, and when my dad was alive, I had a close relationship with him. But I wasn't about to go to them when I was having a hard time because I knew I could see how much they were hurting, and I wasn't about to add to that. And it gets me to my next point of this vicious circle of taking care of each other. So, what this is I saw that my parents were really hurting. So, I wanted to take care of them. And they saw that I was hurting and wanted to take care of me. And the problem is, everyone's trying to take care of everyone else, but no one's actually taking care of their own grief. And I will admit, it's a little convenient to focus on someone else. And even 28 years later, it is really hard for me to see my mom, and it was hard to see my dad be sad about losing Lucy. I wanted to take that pain for them. I was 28 when Lucy died. She was 30. My younger sister was 25. So Cynthia and I have had almost 3 decades of watching my parents be sad. And we both want to take that pain for them. Now, as parents, when your child is sad or hurting, you want to take that pain for them. You don't want to see them suffering. So you could see that this vicious circle of taking care of each other is everyone's trying to take care of everyone else, but no one is taking care of themselves. And ultimately, you do have to take some time to deal with your own grief and process that so that you can all start to heal. Now, I do want to point out that it's important to not be afraid to talk to your grieving child, okay? Um, talk about the loss. My father and I, the day after Lucy was killed, she was a law student in Chicago when she was murdered, and we were in Boston. My father and I flew out to Chicago, and the next morning we had to meet with the police. We had to go to her apartment to collect her valuables, ID, some jewelry and stuff. And we had to go to the morgue and identify her. There was a lot that went on that day. In fact, a lot of it's sort of a blur. The fact that I remember so much of it almost 3 decades later is in part because my father and I talked about that day no less than 50 times in the next 2 years. Because for both of us, it was a way of processing all of this information we took in, but couldn't actually um, we took it in, but we couldn't process it. We just sort of brought it in. And then as we talked about it, we talked about observations we had, feelings we had, things that we thought about, stuff like that. And in working with other sibling survivors and working with parents, I've discovered that some families don't talk about the loss at all. And I don't know that that's the right way to approach it. Um, I can't tell you the number of people that when I tell them about my books go, oh, I lost my brother or sister. And I might be the first person they've got to talk about their loss in 5, 10, or even 20 years because the family simply won't even acknowledge that this person's dead. Their picture isn't up, you can't tell stories. And I think that it's really important. And as a parent, um, depending on how old your child is, but if they're honestly, if they're over the age of 13, don't be afraid to talk about the loss. Share your feelings, okay? Because I know that although I could see my parents were grieving, I didn't necessarily know all of their feelings. And that was hard. I didn't know if they had the same feelings I was having. Um, and perhaps it's just because of having a psychological mind. I thought about why is that? And I gave them permission to talk to me about it. And I think it was really important. I remember my father saying that what he really wanted to do is lock my younger sister and I in the house and not let us out so nothing bad could happen to us. But he realized that that wasn't realistic because we were adults and we were not living in the house anymore. Um, but I really appreciated him sharing that was part of his reaction was he wanted to protect us. And I absolutely understood that, but I was grateful that he didn't say you have to move back in and you can't leave the house. I think it's important that you should let your children know that you are there for them, that it is not a burden for them to share if they're having a bad day, because we are all going to have bad days. There are going to be those moments that just totally derail your day. It may be some kind of a reminder. Now, it could be a song on the radio, it could be a place that you happen to be driving, it could be a scent. I remember Lucy wore opium perfume, and I was on the Boston Tea probably 6 months after she died. And there was a woman who had opium perfume. I could smell it. And it reminded me of Lucy. But I made a choice right after she died, which was I knew that I was going to have reminders of her on a daily and weekly basis. And so I used those as an opportunity to be happy that I got to remember. Even though I was sad, I said I had this unexpected opportunity to remember Lucy, and that's a good thing. Oftentimes, I told you I didn't want to talk to my parents about when I was having a bad day because I didn't want to burden them. And a few years after Lucy died, I shared that with my mom, and she's like, "But I'm your mom. Of course I'm here for you. I want to help you. I never see you sad or, I mean, you're not really telling me that you're sad." And I was like, "You're right, Mom. I don't, you already have enough to deal with. I don't want to burden you." And she's like, "But I'm your mom. It's not a burden." And if you're a parent, you get that. You want to be there for your kids. And your adult children want to be there for you. So if they're not sharing their feelings, if you share some of what's going on, I think it's important. Got a story here. Lucy was killed in December. And the following, I don't know, October or so, uh, I just happened to talk to my dad and I'm like, "Oh, how was your day?" We were talking about something that was coming up that we had a family event that we had. And he's like, "Well, today was unexpectedly hard." And I'm like, "Really? Why, Dad?" And he's like, "Well, I put on a jacket I hadn't worn. It was a winter jacket." And he said, "I put my hand in the pocket and I found a pack of matches from a place that he'd gone to breakfast with Lucy in her first year of law school." And he said, "It totally undid me." And he's like, "Why is it that something like a pack of matches can derail my day?" And we had a little talk about that. But I was so grateful that he was able to share that with me and not just keep it inside. Now, there is a new family that is created when you lose a child. First of all, the birth order somewhat changes. I was the middle child, and all of a sudden at 28, I'm technically the oldest child. And that had all kinds of ramifications. And I bring this up because I think it's really important. If you have lost a child and you have other living children, to think about all of this stuff. When people ask me, do I have any brothers or sisters? I'm comfortable saying I had two sisters, one of them died. Now, depending on who they are or what the situation is, I may share that she was murdered. I may not, because obviously homicide is a pretty heavy thing. That's kind of like a sledgehammer to any kind of conversation. So I'll kind of um, temper that. But technically, I'm the oldest. And there are new expectations for your living children. Now, depending on your cultural background, perhaps your religious background, there may be expectations for the oldest child. And think about, well, let's just take me because I'm right here. Okay. As a quote middle child, I had the privilege of tucking in behind Lucy and paying attention as she was trailblazing. And when she made mistakes, I'd be like, well, that's not how to do that. And all of a sudden at 28, now I'm the oldest child. And I had no idea how to do that job. I didn't know, what new expectations were there for me. And having talked with parents and with siblings, other siblings have shared, yeah, all of a sudden I'm the oldest and I'm expected to provide a house when my parents get old. And I knew nothing of that. I wasn't prepared for that. Or, they have to, maybe it's in your family that when you get older and you need help, you move into one of your children's house. Um, So think about that. I think that that's important to understand, and understand that maybe this new family that you have, this new birth order, your children are struggling to figure out what that means. There are friends of mine who are there were two children, one of them died. Now all of a sudden they're an only child, and there's lots of uh, attention on them, much more so than before. Now, I think it's important not to smother your children. Get curious. Curiosity is a good thing. And use the word curious because it indicates that you're not being overly prying, but that you're curious about what's going on for them. When I say don't smother them, um, I absolutely understand the fear that my parents have felt. I've got two daughters. Luckily, they're both alive. Um, but it's they're young women in the world. I worry about them constantly. But I get curious about what's going on. And one of the things that I've heard repeatedly happened is all of a sudden parents are like, you have to text me or call me when you leave your house, and call me or text me when you get back, when you get to wherever you're going. And then if the child doesn't text them, the parents are losing their mind. They're calling them repeatedly. They're texting them repeatedly. They're sometimes calling the police. This overreaction. We get it, but think about it. I was 28 years old. I was fully an adult, out living my own life. I talked to my parents regularly, but I wasn't telling them every time I left the house. My parents didn't do this, but I've heard so many of my fellow siblings who are like, "Oh my gosh, my mom and dad were like would go bonkers if I forgot to tell them," and they're like, "It was a new thing I had to do. I didn't know why." Communicate and your expectations. Okay. Tell them what your new expectation is for them, what you want them to do, and let them share what they want from you. There is commonality in all of our grief journeys, but we all have our own process. And I think that that's really important to remember that there isn't one right way to do grief. We're each going to do it in our own way. And if you don't know the stages of grief, I've already talked about feeling less important than their parents. It's shock, anger, denial, depression, and acceptance. And sometimes we will work our way up a couple of steps. Maybe we get up to depression and then we go back to anger. That's true for you too. And if we're communicating, we can talk about the days that we're feeling depressed or that we're coming to acceptance. And then we go back to anger or we go back to denial. I certainly know I have my moments where it's just hard for me to believe that Lucy's gone. So work through your grief. Some days are better than others. And, you know, share your struggles with your kids to let them know that they are not alone, that you too are struggling and what your struggle is and how you're feeling. Also, keep in mind that you have to take care of yourself first. Maslow's hierarchy says that we need to have feel safe, we need to have food and shelter. So you can't take care of someone else if you yourself are not already taking care of yourself. So do that. Make sure you take care of yourself. Make a plan for your healing journey and share it. There are so many things that you can do. There are creative outlets for your grief. I created a music video from a song that I heard on the radio, and I went and filmed where Lucy and I grew up and the schools that she went to and places that we went together, and it was incredibly cathartic for me. You got to heal yourself to be able to help take care of other people. Unfortunately, when a child dies, it does have a profound effect on the parents, and sometimes there are high divorce rates. It can be a huge strain on a relationship. Um, there are some effects of negligence. You may be so deep in your own grief journey that your kids, uh, you can't even deal with your kids, and that's hard. And there's this balance that we all have to find. And I can't tell you that there's any magical formula for it, but it's just paying attention that you're communicating with your kids, that you're letting them know how you're doing. And if you're having a bad day, you are allowed to have a bad day. Just because you're a parent doesn't mean that your grief isn't overwhelming on a given day. But if it's going on, just check in with your kids, talk to them. Don't be afraid to let them know that you're there with them. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Zander Sprague. If you'd like to find my book, it's available on Amazon, or you could just go to epicbegins.com and you'll find everything about me. Thank you so much. Have a great day.